Falter-Podcasts werden durch Werbung unterstützt. Das hilft bei der Finanzierung unseres journalistischen Angebots. Falter Radio, der Podcast mit Raimund Löw.
Sehr herzlich willkommen, meine Damen und Herren, im Falter Radio. An Nachrichten aus Gaza über neue humanitäre Katastrophen hat sich die Weltöffentlichkeit nach 9 Monaten des Krieges fast gewöhnt. Was hinter den trockenen Zahlen der vielen ausgelöschten Familien und getöteten Zivilisten steht, will man sich gar nicht mehr vorstellen. Im vergangenen November war das noch etwas anders. Das Schicksal von Dutzenden frühgeborenen Babys im palästinensischen Al-Shifa-Spital hat damals die Welt bewegt. Die Neugeborenen mussten wegen der Kämpfe aus ihren Brutkästen geholt werden. Die Stromversorgung des Spitals ist zusammengebrochen. Auch die Stadt Wien hat damals angeboten, notleidende Babys zu übernehmen, wozu es dann aber nicht gekommen ist. An die 30 Frühgeborene sind per Helikopter aus Gaza herausgebracht worden in die Kinderklinik eines Spitals in Kairo. Die ägyptische Journalistin Randa Abul Azm hat die palästinensischen Frühgeborenen begleitet und sie hat sich um eines der schwer verletzten Babys ganz besonders gekümmert, den jetzt 9 Monate alten Mustafa. Mustafa ist vollweise. Er hat, wie man inzwischen weiß, bei einem israelischen Luftangriff seine ganze Familie verloren. Randa Abul Azm hat einen Film über das Schicksal der Frühgeborenen aus Gaza für den arabischen Fernsehsender Al-Arabiya gemacht. Ich habe mit ihr auf Englisch über ihre Recherchen gesprochen. Welcome to the program, Randa.
Hi, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Randa Abul Azm's film, Gaza's Premature Babies, can be seen on YouTube with English subtitles. And Randa, I wanted to ask you, you had been following very closely what happened to these premature babies from Gaza since many months. Let me ask you, how is it that you found Mustafa, that little baby you had been caring for so intensely? When was that?
Yes, actually, I saw Mustafa when he arrived in Egypt, in Cairo, in the new capital city. That was on the he arrived here in November, but I saw him on December 3rd. And you see, I memorize all the dates that I've been following, not just this baby, but the premature babies. I think many of us across the universe had been following the story since they were in Al-Shifa-Spital when it was bombarded and sacked by the Israeli army. And the situation there was no electricity and they were all in incubators. But Mustafa in particular had a different story. They arrived near death, those children. The most critical cases were all moved to the new capital city hospital, which is a new one and highly equipped and very skilled doctors. I went there when I saw all the babies. Actually, it was the first time that I see them face to face. Mind you, when you watch on television the daily casualties and the civilian losses and the stories on television, that's something. But when you face it face to face, that's a different story altogether. And I remember after recording and after filming the first time, I collapsed and I went to tears and I couldn't bear the whole thing. I mean, I felt so helpless. I felt incompetent. I felt that I can, it's like it was an awful feeling actually that I felt that day. And some of my colleagues from other channels, they saw me collapsing and they know me from the field that I'm rather strong. And they were surprised to see me in that situation.
How was the situation of little Mustafa then, when you met him, and how
Mustafa,
is he now?
Yes, on the 2nd of December, he was isolated in an incubator with a very severe case of dehydration and the microbe, which was very dangerous microbe, and the chances of his survival was very low. And he lost his eye during the bombardment. And we didn't know his family. He only had on his wrist his mother's name, Halima, was written on his list. So he was known as Ibn. Ibn means son of, the son of Halima. That's all what we know about him. We didn't know anything else, along with other babies. The babies who arrived from Gaza on November, were 28 babies. Some of the mothers really reached El Arish or Cairo afterwards, but Mustafa had nobody.
When these premature babies came out of Gaza and were brought to Cairo, that was an international event. At that time, the city
Yes.
of Vienna also had offered to take some of the babies and care for them. That didn't happen. But how did they come to Cairo?
Actually, it was a very dangerous journey. They came from, and it had to have some kind of coordination with Israel, so they don't bombard the ambulances while they were moving from, because Al-Shifa-Spital, that's in northern Gaza, and the Rafah border, that this is in the south. So they had to coordinate during this journey, which was not very long journey, but it was rather so dangerous for them to keep moving with ambulances so they don't shoot them or they don't bombard the ambulances. So when they didn't reach the border. They reached another hospital that's called the Emirati Hospital, very near Rafah border. They stayed there. Of course, they were wrapped in foil paper because they were premature. There was no electricity, no incubators. They were all wrapped in foil. They went in the Emirati hospital. I think 4 of them, they passed away during this journey. One of the mothers, actually, she reached the Emirati hospital before moving to Rafah, and she took her baby. And I heard later on that she regretted that she stayed in Gaza. She would have preferred that her son moved with the other babies to Egypt. 28 children reached Egypt. The ambulances from the Egyptian side, they were there. The most critical cases, I think it was 11 cases then, they were moved by a helicopter immediately to Cairo. It's like a 600-kilometer journey for those babies in that critical condition. Many of them, or all of them, they went into incubators. When I went on the 3rd of December, some of them were well enough to be moved out of the incubators, and the others, they remained inside the incubators. Of course, Mustafa was isolated in an incubator and in isolation room because it was the most critical case of his Mustafa's. And I met one of the mothers who had twin daughters. One of them was still in an incubator, the other was out, and she lost her 3rd son in Gaza.
The babies could get into the incubators only at the moment when they arrived in the hospital, right?
Yeah, the ambulances which were waiting for them on the Rafah border from the Egyptian side, they had incubators. Each one had his own own incubator then. And then they were moved to something more sophisticated, but very well taken care of, actually. And then I suggested a story because of the news, you get sacked. Actually, you get with the tremendous amount of casualties from civilians and children, you don't follow up, and that's a problem. But I suggested a follow-up documentary about those babies. I really wanted to know what happened.
What happened to baby Mustafa? What happened to his family? What did you find out?
Before to tell you what I found out, I was so concerned about him and the others as well. And I kept asking one of the doctors, he was like the head of the doctors, and he said that they don't know anything about his family. They heard that his family all were killed, but they don't know anything. They have no official records. I asked the ambassador, the Palestinian ambassador, he didn't know anything. I went through the records of the Ministry of Health here in Egypt. They didn't have any records. So I started digging, and I suggested the report or the documentary about a follow-up story with those kids. They told me, just go ahead. And then I went on the 3rd of March. That's why I'm telling you, I keep recording and I'm memorizing all the dates. The 3rd of March, when I went, all the kids were out of the incubators. And to my surprise, they were lovely babies. Mustafa, in particular, he had lost one of his eyes, but he was the cutest baby. He kept laughing. He kept smiling. He kept reaching out for me and for the others with the other babies. But he, in particular, you have to be drawn to him the moment you see him, and the contrast between how he was or how he arrived, and then on the 3rd of March that I saw a baby smiling, interacting. He was the most beautiful baby that I even thought of taking him home. And of course, this is impossible, but I kept thinking about him all the time.
Did you know at that time that he was an orphan? Yes, you did.
I knew that he was an orphan, but I didn't know anything. I mean, that's what I was told. So I started asking and asking and asking until finally I reached to a Palestinian doctor. I told him, did you by any chance know any of his family? He said, I finally got to know that his grandmother is in Gaza. I asked him of her number. And there are no network operating in Gaza. It's very difficult to get a network to call or to send a WhatsApp. Or he gave me her number. I texted her and I asked her. I said, I'm Randa Abul Azm. I'm from Al Arabiya, and I'm asking if you are related to Ibn Halima, because I didn't know his name. He was not named, by the way. And then maybe like 5 hours later, she said, how did you get my number? I told her I got it from a Palestinian doctor. And then she said, yes, I am his grandmother. And then she started, of course, this is texting, no phone calls. And then she recorded voice calls. She told me the story of her daughter who passed away and her grandchildren, his family, that when Mustafa was born, 8 days later, there was no water. They couldn't bathe him. So he had his name written on his wrist. And then the building that they were staying, the mother and the baby and his brothers, it was bombed. Mustafa, in his crib, he flew to another building, and they found him intact in his bed, which was on the 4th floor, ironically, but his eye was gone. And the mother was severely wounded. One of his brothers was killed. The other brother was still alive. So the grandmother, they took baby Mustafa. He wasn't named even then. They put him in Al-Shifa-Spital, and then she was occupied with her daughter, who was severely injured. Afterwards, she was out of the hospital, and then they took her to another building with her other son. She got bombarded again, and she got killed. And the other son was turned to ashes. They couldn't even find him to bury him. Until before I contacted her, like 10 days earlier, she didn't know that Mustafa was alive or killed. She didn't know anything about him. So when I told him, are you his grandmother? She begged me to enter Egypt and to be with him, because he's the only alive baby from her daughter's family. I contacted the authorities immediately. And you know how difficult it is to enter from the Rafah border. She had no passport, nothing. She comes from a very, very poor family, by the way.
In your film, we see the grandmother crossing to Egypt from Gaza. You made it possible for her to leave Gaza. How was that possible?
I contacted the authorities here. I asked them. I told them that I'm following the story, and I found his grandmother, and I asked them to rejoin the baby with his grandmother. They told me, okay, send us her documents. It was an ID. I sent her ID. And by the way, the grandmother, she's born in 1984, and that was a surprise for them. She's very young. The mother herself, Halima, was killed. She was 24 years old. They told me, let her follow her name in the list of the people who can cross the borders. Of course, she had no way of following. I kept following myself. I joined the groups because she had to be on the border 7 a.m. until like 48 hours later. I found her name, but it was at 11 p.m. when I found her name. I tried to contact her to tell her rush to the border. I couldn't. There was no net. I tried to contact her daughter, her other daughter. There was no network. Until finally I contacted another Palestinian. I told her, because she was one of the refugees in the Rafah camps. I told him, please go to her and tell her that she has to be on the border at 7 a.m. So thank God he told her, and she went. And I managed to contact my colleague, reporter, who's also Palestinian, who is working in Gaza. I told him, please go to follow her story before she crosses the border. And at the meantime, I let one of my fixers wait for her at the Rafah border from the Egyptian side to put her in a taxi or a car because it's a very long way, by the way, from Rafah to Cairo. And it was Ramadan, where we were all fasting, and she was fasting herself. And then she crossed the border. I didn't sleep that night, by the way, till she crossed.
That is a really an incredible story. Randa, let me ask you something a little bit out of that concrete case. In the New York Times, there was a couple of days ago an article about an Egyptian travel agency specialized to get people out of Gaza. Exactly. Yes. But it costs many $1,000s per person. Is that something that is day-to-day life for Gazan people? If they want to get out, they have to book a seat with this Egyptian travel agency and find somebody who pays thousands of dollars?
Unfortunately, yes. But of course, I got the grandmother with no payment, and not through this company at all. I got her through authorities, legal authorities here, who put her name, and she passed. We did not pay anything for her. But the story is true. And from this Hala company, it's like a VIP, gives VIP services. If you're wealthy enough, yes, you can book and you pay, and then later on, you find your name on the list and they get you in. This is one way of getting out of Gaza then, because the border now is closed since the 7th of May. There is no going in or out of Gaza. But this was before 7th of May. Since Israel occupied the Rafah border and took the only border with Palestine, with the Egyptian, there is no way of getting in and out for any individuals. The only border that is opened only for assistance is Karm Abu Salim, or Karm Shalom, as they call it, and that's another story. No individuals can come in or out of Gaza now since the 7th of May.
The grandmother Amne Abrabu from Gaza made it to Cairo.
Yes.
How did she react to the baby, and what's her situation now, and what's the situation of the baby now?
She entered Cairo. My fixer, he took her to have her meal before she continues her journey to Cairo, and she was crying because she said, I'm eating chicken, and my children who are still at my family are still there. They cannot find anything to eat. And she burst into tears. That was the first reaction. And then my fixer called me and told me she came out with nothing except the clothes that she was wearing. She had no luggage, nothing. So I had to prepare something for her because she came, that's the situation. She told me afterwards that she kept walking. She was from northern Gaza in a town called Jabalia, where it was all bombed, and she had to move, walking towards the south. She was staying in a tent, whether in the heat or in the cold weather, whatever, with her family. And they are very, very extremely poor. So when I found her, she came in, I booked her a hotel to spend the night because she came out very late. And then the following morning, we went together to the hospital. Of course, it was very, very emotional. Everybody just watched and kept crying. The hospital staff, the manager, the doctors, the cameraman, it was very, very emotional for her to finally see and reunite with her grandchild.
What's her situation now?
She is still. I'm in touch with her, and I managed with a Palestinian colleague to get her a passport. And I also managed with, that's after even the story was aired, because I'm still in contact with them and I still visit them. I got to the baby a birth certificate, which is almost impossible because all the records were gone during the bombing. I got him a birth certificate and I got him a passport, of course, with the help of a Palestinian friend. The baby is the most beautiful baby that you can ever see. Now, he was born in October, of course, during the war. He had to go through several surgeries because he has to put a prosthetic eye instead of the one that he lost. And this is an ongoing process because as far as I learned from the doctors, that the eye, they have to change it as he grows. and they had to go through several phases. Also, he was circumcised because of the Muslim tradition, and he had something with the urinary tract that he had to go another surgery. But still, I mean, I got his videos, and his videos really makes my day every day. That when I get them, he's smiling, he's laughing. I got him a walker so he can go and start running. He's really brilliant. The boy is so intelligent.
What's the situation of a baby like that and the grandmother in Cairo? They have Palestinian passports? Are they sort of refugees? What is their status?
No, they are not refugees. They are staying still. They are still in the hospital. They didn't leave the hospital. But the mothers who were reunited with their babies, the other mothers who reunited with their babies, now are placed in a building. The Egyptian authorities are taking care of them, helping them with the baby food, with whatever they need. And I think, I'm not sure, but I think that the Palestinian embassy also is contributing. But we still have another problem, that 8 other babies, we cannot locate their families. You know, my main concern now, okay, thank God, I mean, Mustafa is a beautiful baby, and the others are so beautiful as well. Babies are all beautiful, but what is their future?
No mother, no family that could be found.
Even when the war stops, how can they go back? Where will they go back? They have nothing, literally nothing. Everything is bombarded. What kind of future can he have? If he needs medication, if he needs to follow, if he needs education, I mean, this is the basic needs of any child in the world. He has to live like a normal child. He's not, this baby in the 8 months that he lived in horror, having to go through all this. I cannot imagine. And still he's laughing, he's smiling, he's interacting.
Children are suffering in a terrible way in the Gaza war. You spoke to the United Nations General Secretary, you spoke to UNICEF, the relevant UN organization, about the situation of children. How do they describe the consequences for the children, and what can they do?
Actually, I asked specifically the UNICEF, because they are in the UN, this is the organization that takes care of children. I asked them, have you witnessed such a catastrophe for children in any other war? They said, no, this is unprecedented. And the trauma, you see, you have either orphans or not even, I mean, orphans, handicapped, traumatized. This is the situation of the children in Gaza. Do you know that's like the number is increasing on daily basis. When I aired this report, only 17,000 children were killed. Now it's over 21,000. 30 or 40,000 civilians, 2/3 of which are killed, are women and children. Can you imagine the traumatization that those children had gone through? How can they ever overcome this? And what kind of future? I don't know. I mean, this is beyond me, and this is really concerning me, beyond belief.
If one speaks about Gaza, of course, you cannot avoid politics, you cannot avoid the war. In Israel these days, there are thousands in the streets to demand an end of the war and an exchange of hostages. What is your impression for the people in Gaza? Do they think it's worth to continue fighting?
It depends. I mean, I'm talking about civilians. I'm anti-Hamas, by the way. I am 100% anti-Hamas. If you talk politics, this is the politics of it. Netanyahu, if he stops the war, he would be put in prison or he would be prosecuted. He doesn't want to end the war. And for Hamas, they just don't care about the civilians. For me, for Randa, personally, this is my opinion. My main concern is about the civilians. Civilians, they cannot live like that. No civilian. This is not a country. When sometimes I get into a conversation with even foreigners, they tell me, well, wars is about that. I said, yes, wars, if there are 2 countries, each one has an army like Ukraine and Russia. But they are civilians. They had nothing. They have nothing. And they will have nothing.
When you talk to people in Gaza, to Palestinians in Gaza, what's your feeling? What do they think about Hamas and the way Hamas is waging this war?
I'll tell you about at least my colleagues, because I have my colleagues, they're just furious. They are furious to see what's going on. My colleagues who are working in Gaza, reporters there, but of course they are in there. They cannot speak out because they can get targeted themselves. It's very tricky. So I'm out and I don't care. Actually, I'm anti-Hamas. But let me tell you something. You know that the Muslim Brotherhood is the main umbrella for Hamas. You know this historically. The Muslim Brotherhood, who was founded back in 1929, that's the motherhood of the Hamas. Hamas stemmed out of the Muslim Brotherhood. Ironically, the United States they were welcoming the Muslim Brotherhood when they ruled Egypt back in 2012. Okay, that was elections, but I know the elections, what it means in Egypt. They are mastering elections. Like Hamas, they were mastering elections back in 2007. Anyways, can you imagine having the same sect or cult or whatever you call it ruling Egypt till now? What would have become out of Egypt? And they're not recognized as terrorists, but Hamas is recognized as terrorists. They are the same. Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas, they are the same. So why is it taken in another direction?
What we have in Egypt, of course, now is a military ruling, a military dictatorship.
Since 1952 is a military rule, and you know that.
But let's come back just for the atmosphere in Gaza. Do you see when you talk to your producers and they take the mood of the people whose houses are destroyed, who live in tents? Is it possible that there is some kind of pressure towards Hamas in order to come to an end of the fighting, to do a compromise with Israel?
I doubt it. I doubt it. 40,000 have been killed so far, and it's not pressure enough. Come on. And it's not just about Hamas that they want to stop to end the war. It's about who has more power, who has more force. Not Hamas. No, it's the army. Let's be practical. Who can stop the war? Not just Hamas. It's the other side. We have UN resolutions that were not implemented. We have people in Israel, they are anti this war, and it's not stopped. We have voices, we have a court that says that this is a genocide. When I see that they are targeting children, yes, it is for me, it looks like a genocide because they are targeting babies. And let me ask you another thing. What do you expect out of babies being orphaned or by Israel? What do you think that in the future they would love Israel?
It's a desperate situation. It's a situation that seems really to be in a dead end, where any outcome looks very difficult, and maybe even things can get worse. That's one of these situations. But Randa, let me ask you to come back to the premature babies and the baby Mustafa in Cairo. How do you see their destiny in the future?
That's my main concern. What about their future? Okay, they are well taken care of now, I'm sure of, because I even offered to help, to give assistance personally, of course not. And then they told me, no, they are very well taken care of. They do, because I went there again like 3 weeks earlier. They are very well taken care of. Whether medically or in terms of toys, of walkers, of food, everything. But what is the future? For how long? Babies cannot stay or remain in hospitals. It's not their natural place. And I don't think they should go to an orphanage either. And okay, here's Mustafa, back to Mustafa again. This boy has to go through several surgeries through all his life till a teenager or a grown up or a fully matured. How about their education? Education is essential. In Gaza, they are many Gazans are very well educated, despite the catastrophe that they have been living in, but they are well educated. What will become for those babies?
So you would think that in case the war ends, these babies will go back to Gaza and will live maybe with their families if they are found, or if they are there, or
if they are found. Yes, if they are found, because in Gaza it's a bit different. They have the extended family, like the uncle and the aunt, and they always have many children. They're not like in Europe or even in Egypt. Each family would have at least 4 or 5 or 6 kids. So they have the extended family, but I cannot locate so far 8 of those children. I cannot locate their families yet. Something has to be done. I mean, I am trying, and the grandmother has been approached after the movie by some kind of organization to take care of the baby, but I don't know what happened yet. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work, because I'm really concerned about his future. And she told me, honestly, I will not live for him forever, and you will not live for him forever. And it's true. I mean, I'm doing the best that I can now, at least for the people, for this story to get out, because I know that people get used to the scenery of war on television, and they don't want to listen. They don't want to interact. Some out of this they are desperate. They don't know what to do, so they don't want to watch. And others, it's just it's life, it's war.
We only can hope for this war to end.
Yeah, the first step, end the war. The first step, this war has to end now, because on daily basis you have the numbers are just adding up. I mean, the catastrophe is, imagine that Mustafa and the other babies are the lucky ones. With their situation, they are lucky.
Your film, Randa, ran on television early this summer. What have the reactions been?
I've been contacted by so many people. They praised that, and I think it reached many people. That's why I wanted it to reach out abroad in Europe, in the States, by subtitle, because I wanted the people to see, I wanted everyone to see this humanitarian side. Let's get out of Hamas and Netanyahu and the cabinets and the extremism, and let's look at those human beings. Because I don't think anyone can afford to look at a baby and see the situation and just turn his face and say, well, they deserve it or they don't. No, nobody deserves this.
Thank you very much, Randa Abul Azm. The film, Randa's film, can be seen on YouTube. Its title is Gaza's Premature Babies, Their Future and Destiny After the Rescue. Thank you very much, and all the best to Cairo.
Thank you very much, and the best for you. Thank you very much for bringing the story, and I wish that this war ends. Thank you.
Das Gespräch mit Randa Abul Azm haben wir am 25. Juni 2024 aufgenommen. Ich verabschiede mich von allen, die uns auf UKW zuhören. Berichte und Analysen von allen Seiten des Gaza-Krieges lesen Sie im Falter. Ich empfehle ein Abonnement des Falter. Alle Informationen gibt es im Internet unter der Adresse abo.falter.at. Ursula Winterauer hat die Signation gestaltet. Audiotechnisch betreut Clara Gottsauner-Wolf diese Sendung. Danke, Clara. Ich verabschiede mich. Bis zur nächsten Folge.
Sie hörten das Falterradio, den Podcast mit Raimund Löw.